All right, Perry, welcome to the Modern Marketing Podcast. Super excited to have you here.
It's great to be here and great to be talking to you about some of our favorite topics. And it's going to be very worth people's time to listen in. And we don't even know where it's going to end up. We know where we're starting, but
that's it.
But we'll take you on an adventure, that's for sure. You're down the rabbit hole. This is Jabberwocky right here.
I can guarantee that based on the conversation we had just before hitting record here. We've already discussed how to narrow in. We've discussed future affiliate launches. We've taken over the world here. So. No, I mean, I'm really excited because as those of you that don't know Perry, and I think everybody should know Perry, I gave a bit of an intro before we hit record here, but maybe you can give it in your words, essentially who you are and what you do, and then I'll explain why I'm such a huge fan here.
Well, people best know me as the guy that cracked the code on Google AdWords, and my books on Google and Facebook advertising are the best selling on those topics. I've probably slowly become maybe as well or more known for 80/20 because 80/20 was really the secret sauce behind figuring all that other stuff out. It was like, actually, if I knew well enough how to recognize 80/20, how to apply 80/20, then all of a sudden, so I mean, I had this realization. It was actually in 2003. Hey, wait a minute. Everything in Google AdWords is 80/20. Like every column, it could sort by any of those columns and run any of those numbers and or break apart the ads and figure out what's where everything was 80/20. So it was like you can actually ignore anywhere from 75 to 95% of what's going on here and just zero in on these super important things. And that ended up being true. And so it's really it's the book I wish I'd had when I was, I was 26 years old. I got laid off from any engineering job. My wife is 3 months pregnant. I remember I'm driving down Manheim Road in the Chicago suburbs going home at 11 o'clock in the morning because I just had that meeting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How many people have been in that meeting? And like, okay, so what am I going to do now? And I ended up going into sales and, that was a rude awakening, thrown out of the frying pan and into the fire. I wish I'd understood. I mean, I was so clueless. And the ironic thing is, I thought it was really smart. Like, I remember in engineering school sitting in the engineering library at 2 o'clock in the morning doing these impossible math problems and stuff, and talking to all the other guys about how stupid the business majors are and how stupid the football players are, and having this little ego trip, while, man, we're doing stuff nobody else can do. It's like, well, try selling something for a living.
Yes.
See how that goes.
Yeah.
And so, that was a rough 2 years of my life with spiraling credit card debt and, well, gee, are you going to have to take a second job? And if I take the second job, I will never see my wife and baby, but at least we won't have to move in with her parents on the farm in Nebraska, like how will that turn out? Right. And so people really have no idea how deep and powerful 80/20 is. They think that it's this little rule of thumb that somebody came up with, which is occasionally handy. And it's the rule of cause and effect in the entire universe. Now, that's like a pretty big switch. Like if it goes from being out on the edge of your consciousness or this little term you throw around to like, oh my goodness, this kind of explains everything. Like, what? That's a sex change operation for you.
No kidding. Yeah, a massive kind of paradigm shift. And essentially, I mean, that's like, I've got the book, I've got it tagged, I've got it highlighted, I've got the audio version, I've gone through it a number of times. And what's interesting is that the first time I went through it, I was like, wow, that's profound. I'm going to start implementing this. And it took time. And it didn't go smooth because I wasn't good at it. I understood it intellectually, but to actually do it. And so I went through it again. And I started making more changes and more changes. And I'd like to think of myself as like still a white belt or a yellow belt in this whole process of figuring out 80-20. But the more that I understand it and the more that I apply it, the more profound the effects are. So it really is amazing, and just how sort of universally applicable it is to everything. Obviously, we're in the context of marketing here and how we can apply it to business. But yeah, it's amazing just how powerful this really is.
Yeah. So let me give you an illustration, and then we can jump into a bunch of different applications of this. So my favorite 80-20 story is that my friend John Paul Mendoza, when he was in the middle of his senior year in a high school in Denver, dropped out, hitchhiked to Las Vegas, and became a professional gambler. At age 17, he thought that would be really cool. He had all these gambling books and he'd been studying them. And, like when you get all geeked out about a subject, like, well, you got to just go do it.
Totally.
So off he goes. His mother is like going to mass every morning at 6 o'clock, lighting candles, hoping he doesn't get killed.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, like that desire was not misplaced at all.
Yeah.
Okay. As I shall explain. Probably good thing she did that. So after a few weeks in Vegas, he's like, dang, this is like harder than I thought it was going to be. I don't know if anyone's ever experienced that before.
Yeah.
And he runs into this guy who runs a gambling ring, and his name is Rob. And they get into this conversation like, well, so Rob, do you think you could teach me how to play better poker? And he's like, for a percentage of your winnings, I could teach you how to play better poker. And so they agree and they shake on it. As soon as they're done shaking hands, he says, jump in the Jeep, John. We're going for a ride. So, all right, they're going down the highway. Okay, Rob, how do I win more poker games? And Rob goes, you have to play people who are going to lose so that you can win. And those people are called marks. And John says, okay, so where do I find marks? And he says, here, I'll show you. And he pulls into a parking lot of a strip club. And he goes in there, and there's women and poles and rock and roll and bikers and people drinking and all the stuff. Could we all agree that it's a very distracting environment?
We can say yes. Yeah, a Vegas strip club. Yeah.
Okay. Which the distracting environment is actually the key to this whole story. And Rob pulls a sawed-off shotgun out of his jacket, which he carried with him at all times. He puts it under the table. He opens the chamber, and then he slams it shut. And it goes, ch-ch, makes that racking noise. They call that racking the shotgun. And there's a few biker dudes in there. They're like, whoa. Their heads spin around like, who did that? Where's that sound coming from, right? I mean, they're reaching for their pistols.
Yeah.
Right? And meanwhile, everybody else is oblivious, right?
Yeah.
And the club owner comes over and he says, hey, what's going on over here?
Yeah.
And Rob goes, it's like he knew the guy. Don't worry about us. Just teaching the lad a lesson. Just, not going to cause any trouble here. And he says, John, did you see those bad looking dudes who turned around when they heard that noise? And he's like, yeah. And he goes, don't play poker with them. They're not marks.
Yeah.
Play poker with everybody else. Okay. Now, that is racking the shotgun. In everything you do in marketing is racking the shotgun. Okay. And what it is, and this is a term, like all of my customers know this term because you almost can't talk intelligibly about what marketers do without that term. In fact, that term, that it's become a vocabulary. So Donald Trump racks the shotgun all the time. Okay. And what he's doing is he's dividing the room. Now, it doesn't matter that he's a little bit crazy. Okay. It's a little crazy to rack a shotgun in the middle of a strip club.
It is indeed.
Okay. Okay. The point is, it tells you who's on one side of a dotted line and who's on the other.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, maybe you want to play poker with a bunch of like the 18-year-old from Wichita who just got his grandmother's inheritance money. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you pick that guy. Maybe you want to go on a skeet shooting retreat outside of Reno. So you pick the biker guys and you take them, or maybe you want to sell drugs. I mean, whatever.
Right.
Okay.
Another marketing discussion for another day. Yeah.
Right. The point is, who turns their head when you rack the shotgun? Okay. Mm-hmm. And so almost anything that you do could be racking the shotgun. It could be quoting a Bible verse. Mm-hmm. It could be referencing some movie. Mm-hmm. Okay. It could be showing a picture of, something that a certain group of people will respond to. It could be just using a certain language. So you send an email. Some people open it. Some people don't. That's rack the shotgun. Some people click on the link. Some people don't. That's rack the shotgun. Some people sign up for the webinar. Some people download the podcast. Some people listen to the podcast. Mm-hmm. Some people leave a 5-star review on the podcast. Some people, call you. They call Adam and say, can you consult? Every one of these things is racking the shotgun.
Yeah.
And now here's what, so that's cool. And you can, you could rack the shotgun, or somebody else could rack the shotgun. You could build your own email list. You could go run somebody else's email list. There's lots of ways to do it. But there's a couple things that go even deeper and that everybody has to really know about 80/20. The first thing is so like in the strip club, maybe 10% of the people turn their heads, maybe 20%, maybe 30. The exact number is 80/20 isn't exactly the point. Mm-hmm. The point is there's the symmetry. The symmetry is, if it's 80/20, it means that 80% of the response comes from 20% of the people. Mm-hmm. It means that 20% of the response comes from 80% of the people, or like keywords in a Google account. Mm-hmm. 5% of the keywords produce 95% of the traffic. Yeah. 95% of the keywords produce 5% of the traffic. This is always going on, and it's true everywhere. It's true of incomes. It's true of where's the dirt on your carpet that goes from the front door through the living room. Mm-hmm. Okay, like where do people walk? Which rooms in your house do people spend their time in? Which roads do people drive on? How big are the craters on the moon? If I go to the beach and I get a bucket of sand, how big are the grains of sand? It's all 80/20, mm-hmm. because 80/20 is cause and effect. It's the cause and effect of positive feedback loops. So what do I mean by positive feedback loop? Well, 2 14-year-olds try Jack Daniels. One of them kind of likes it, and one of them likes it a lot. 30 years later, the first one has 2 drinks a week. Okay? The second one has 2 drinks before breakfast every day. Mm-hmm. Okay? Because so he liked it, so he got more, and then he liked it more, and then he got more, and then he liked it, and then he got addicted, and it spiraled, right? Mm-hmm. And so the alcoholic drinks literally 100 times as much booze as the regular person, okay? But it started with one of them liked it a little more than the other, okay? Mm-hmm. But it's the little more multiplied by 30 years. Mm-hmm. And so it's exponential, and everything is like that. All the numbers in business are exponential. All the numbers of cause and effect are exponential. All the sizes of grains of sand and molecules and stars and planets, they're all exponential. The traffic on roads, internet traffic, it's all exponential. And so most business owners think in terms of adding and subtracting, or just incrementally. No, it's about multiples that, there's 10 things that'll get you X, but there's one thing that'll get you 10X.
Right.
There's 10 things that get you 10x, but there's one thing that'll get you 100x.
Yeah.
And so this is extremely powerful, and it's absolutely everywhere. It's the size of files on your hard drive, and it's the visitors to different pages on your website. It's all 80/20. So, and now here's a second thing, is that there's an 80/20 inside every 80/20. There's an exponential inside every exponential. Yeah. So if you have, let's say you got a big company and it's got 1,000 salespeople. Well, some bean counter thinks that they're all supposed to be equal. But the truth is they're very unequal. Here's how unequal they are. 80% of the sales comes from 200% of them. From 20% of them, which is 200. Okay. 80% of the 80% comes from 20% of the 200, which is 40. So 64% of your sales come from 40 of those 1,000 salespeople.
Yeah.
Okay. 50% of the sales comes from 8 of those salespeople. Okay. So really? So I've got 1,000 salespeople and 10 of them sell half of the stuff and the other 990 sell the other half?
Yeah.
Yes. And everything in your business is like that. If you open up your spreadsheets and you look in QuickBooks or, whatever, you will find that this is true. Okay. And so it's the most common pattern that nobody has ever noticed. Mm-hmm. It is everywhere. Like, it is not possible to look out your window and not see something that's 80/20.
Yeah.
Okay. 20% of the sky right now above you has 80% of the clouds. Mm-hmm. Right now. I guarantee you it's true. This was such a paradigm shift when I realized it was like, oh, so I actually moved this idea from far on the edge of my consciousness to actually, this is like the center of the universe. And if I just get good at this, I could consult any company. I could fix any marketing campaign. Mm-hmm. I could go into any manufacturer and do quality control. I could reduce defects, and I could get a lot of output for a little bit of input.
Yeah.
I mean, that's powerful. That is so powerful.
Yeah.
And I've been obsessing about it ever since.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it's unbelievable when you first hear the concept of it. And then when you start to dig into it, just how sort of, again, universally applicable it is. Yeah, it's mind-blowing. And I think for me, when I first started implementing it, I fought it really hard because I was like, there's no way. And okay, fine, I get it. Maybe I'll try this. And I ignored it for probably far too long. And then when I finally started to do it, I think I started... If I remember right, the first place I implemented it was with my clients, and I listed them out. I was like, all right, cool. So these are my client list. And turns out, yeah, they were in regards to amount of money that I was earning from them was split very clearly. The amount of time that it took to deliver those results, the amount of enjoyment I had working with different groups of clients, like all of these things started to line up. And so I started really geeking out and making a spreadsheet and putting the numbers behind, and it became... really powerful to be able to say, all right, cool, these clients have got to go. We need more clients like this. This is how we grow. And I think I started saving at least a few hours a week, and then it just sort of compounded from there by not having to deal with pain in the bottom clients and dealing with better ones there. So for someone that's looking at this and they're like, okay, that's cool. How do I even start? Like, where is the low-hanging fruit here? For me and my marketing, because I know a lot of people listening, especially when it comes to marketing, they're very overwhelmed. They see these hyper complicated funnels, the advanced segmentation, behavioral dynamic, like all this stuff. They're like, that is ridiculous. And they're on every social media platform doing everything poorly, and they're trying to decide where to go. So where do they start? Okay,
so let's talk through a few really simple things that you can do to start to do 80/20. So the first thing is that 80/20 says that you have to subtract. Okay? And this is what Rob was doing with his shotgun in the strip club. Yeah. He was subtracting from the list of candidates to see who was left. Mm-hmm. Okay? And most of us, myself included, just kind of chronically and habitually want to say yes to everything.
Yes.
I mean, I'm a people pleaser and I like people and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, if your business has matured to any degree, you have clients that are losing you money. Okay. You have clients where literally it costs you more money to serve them than you actually make.
Yes.
You have customers that actually lose, like you have products where every time you ship them out the door, you're taping dollar bills to them. Okay. And unless you're doing it very deliberately, which I can talk about if you like, unless you're doing it really deliberately, you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
So I was at this room full of CPAs giving a presentation. So all these certified public accountants, tax preparers and everything. And, you know, this accounting guru, business guru was running the show. And so I get up there and I said, okay, so how many of you, you guys just went through tax season. How many of you, you got this client and they're a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
And you really don't like them, and they're bringing you these giant shoe boxes full of receipts, and they're just pounding you with all these emails and everything, and you're not really making money. How many of you know that client? Like the whole room, the hands go up. I said, okay, Perry Marshall, credentials, famous author, blah, blah, blah. I hereby, you all paid money to come here. You flew on airplanes, and here you are. I give you permission to fire that client. There's no reason in the world why you have to do their taxes. There's none. Okay. There's no law of the universe that says just because they were born and you were born too means your paths had to cross and like you have to do this stuff for them. Yeah. No. Like, and so you don't have to be mean. You don't have to be nasty, but you could send them a letter and email. You could say, my business partner and I, your wife, we were reviewing our accounts and we just realized there are certain accounts that we can't service anymore. And unfortunately, you were on the list. And I'll be happy to transition you to whoever. Yeah. Right. I'll get your shoe boxes full of receipts and we'll get them over and right. And you got rid of them. And the minute you did that, you just gave yourself a raise. Okay. Number 2, you lowered your stress. 3, you lowered your amount of work that you have to do. And 4, you opened up an opportunity. Okay. Now let's talk about where that opportunity lies. Okay. So you just subtracted from the bad side of 80-20. Yeah. Okay. Now, if you understand 80-20, what it tells you is that the effective stuff is 16 times more powerful than the ineffective stuff. Yeah. So if you look at those, the 800 bad salespeople and the 200 good salespeople, the good ones on average are 16 times better at selling than the bad ones. Okay. Yeah. And this is also true. And I'm not even talking about like the top 4%. I'm just talking about the top 20%. Yeah. 16 times, right? Like, I think it was Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or one of those guys said that, I think it was Steve Jobs. He said a great taxi driver is maybe 3 times better than an ordinary taxi driver, but a great computer programmer is 1,000 times better than an average computer programmer. And it's true. Yeah. Look at these empires these guys made. You think. You look at all that stuff on your phone and like the way iOS has an update and it downloads and just completely seamlessly. Yeah. You think they're doing that with like ordinary programmers that they just got from Southeast Community College in Nebraska? Are you kidding? Yeah. No, man. They're paying these guys $350,000 a year and they're catering to their every need and they're giving them stock options because they're amazingly good. Because the guy's like, no, don't architect it this way. Architect it that way. It'll save you 900 hours. Yeah. And somebody knows how to do that, right? Okay, so now, okay, so here's where you put in that effort. And I call it the Starbucks principle of the $2,700 espresso machine, okay? Yeah. Now, 80-20 if you get into the numbers, and I'm not going to go into the number stuff here on your podcast, but my book does have some chapters for numbers geeks that you can geek out on it. It actually very accurately predicts what people do and what will happen. So here's an example of that. So in fact, there's a calculator tool that comes with the book. Well, so if you have a Starbucks and every week 1,000 people buy a $5 latte, 80/20 says so that's $5,000, right?
Yeah.
One of those 5,000 people will spend $2,700 on an espresso machine. Okay, so that gets you from 5,000 to 7,700.
Yeah, pretty quick
in revenue.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
With the one person. What 80/20 says is that if 1,000 people spent $5, 200 of them want to spend $20, and 40 of them want to spend $160, and 8 of them want to spend $640, and it just keeps going. So 80/20 says that there's basically a law of attraction. And by the way, I'm not being woo-woo.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's math. In mathematics, it's in science, it's called an attractor. It's saying that a small percentage of those people will have an espresso hole burning in their wallet. And it's obsessive. They're like Grateful Dead fans. You know those guys that like followed them around to every single concert.
Yeah.
Okay. They can't get enough. I mean, I knew a guy. Marketers, they're entrepreneurs. Most of us are obsessive, right? And some of us like have a lot of money and I knew a guy, he followed Van Halen and Rush all over the country. He went to like every concert. He's like, man, I can run my business from a hotel room. And man, Eddie Van Halen, and he could tell you about like every different version of the guitar solo. And, right. Okay. And so anything that people are passionate about. I mean, it could be Jack Daniels, it could be espresso, it could be stereo equipment, right? There's this small number of people that they're just super passionate. One of my favorite things to do when I speak at seminars, I always do this exercise. And I'll go, okay, everybody who owns shoes, stand up.
Yeah.
Right? And I'll go, okay, if you own less than 5, sit down, and then people sit down. And then I'll go less than 10, and I'll go 20, 40, 80, 160, 320. Okay. Yeah. And I keep doubling it. Right. Yeah. Now, this is very counterintuitive. Most people would never think to just double the number.
Yeah.
Okay. Listen, every time the number doubles, half the people sit down. Okay. So I was speaking at an Entrepreneur Magazine conference in Miami, and one lady had 800 pairs of shoes. Okay, this happens to me all the time. Yeah. There's always one lady that has like 250, 300, 400, 500 shoes. Yeah. Always. Okay. Okay, so like, hey, everybody, guess what? 1% of the people in this room own half the shoes. Yeah. I did domain names. A guy had 10 million.
Crazy. Makes me feel okay with my paltry number then. Yeah.
Well, right. Yeah, you got domain names and I got domain names. We all got these ideas that we never pursue. Yes, you're supposed to. Yeah. You're not supposed to pursue all of them. The guy that builds a website for every one of his domain names, that is not 80/20. No. Yeah. No, how about one website that makes you a lot of money, and don't feel guilty about the rest. And your wife goes, well, what are you going to do with all those websites? They're going to be my 80%. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I need those to justify the math. I was like, that's going to be my new approach for every hobby. I'm like, look, I don't even want to do this. I just have to for the math. I'm sorry. That's right. Perfect. No, and that's absolutely right. I think what people need to remember when they're listening to this and they're taking it away is that the same applies for, yes, we need to cut, say, the bottom 20% of the customers. That's going to open up this space. And then to make sure that you've got those different tiered pricing options or service levels that are kind of congruent with the part of the market that wants to spend it, that you're losing essentially to someone else who is able to serve them at that level. And that's profound for me, because I think we all have sort of this natural block of like, well, look, if I wouldn't spend it, or I'm not at that level, or whatever it is.
Right.
We think no one is. And the reality is that mathematically there's hundreds of thousands, millions of people, who knows how many people will and want to, as long as you put that offer in front of them. Well,
right. And the funny thing is if you know how many people will buy one pair of shoes at Payless for $19.95, you can figure out how many people will spend $2,000 on a pair of pumps, or how many people will buy, $50 $2,000 shoes, because they're and 80/20 will tell you like exactly how many. There's an example in the book about, okay, so if the Chicago Bears can sell 65,000 tickets for like a basic seating, how many skyboxes are they going to sell? And you look at it, it's like, I'll be darned, that's like about how many skyboxes they actually have. It's like, yes, it's incredibly predictable. And so if you know this, you actually know things that most people, so there's this whole world that suddenly it's like X-ray vision. You can see it and it's invisible to everybody else. And now you have an advantage. And of course, what I'm talking about here, this is like, I would call this is like yellow belt or green belt 80/20 stuff.
Okay.
It's not brown belt. It's not black belt. It's not triple black belt. Like you can just go up the scale. Now, people struggle with this. Let's talk about several reasons why. Well, one reason is everybody's been taught to think about average. Of course, average is like the easiest statistical thing you could ever understand. Well, average almost never tells you what you actually want to know. Okay, the average number of shoes in the room doesn't tell you about the lady that has 800, because the average number is like 8 or 10, right? But there's this one lady that, so if you're selling shoes, who do you care about? Do you care about all these unwashed masses of people? And especially if you have limited capital. So Payless shoes or Walmart, they can sell to everybody. None of my customers sell to everybody. Even the big clients, like, I've got a client, Gallery Furniture in Houston, and they're the biggest furniture store in Houston, and they're huge and they're famous, and everybody knows who Mattress Mac is if you live in Houston. They don't sell to everybody. They sell to the top 20%. Their furniture is expensive. They don't even sell children's furniture. You know that? And by the way, this is totally 80/20 why they do this. It's exactly 80/20. So one of the things, so here, let me give you like this is like a blue belt.
Perfect. We're escalating. We're gonna get into our affiliate martial arts training at the end there, but
yes, and we're gonna do it on top of Mount Kilimanjaro, and we're gonna charge everybody $86,000 to come.
We've worked out how many people are going to meet us there.
That's right. So. We're going to get 4 of them.
That's right.
You and I, we're going to split $86,000 after expenses, which is going to, net both of us like a lot of money.
Perfect.
So here's the blue belt thing. It's called the 20-120 rule, and you have to listen to this carefully. 20% of your customers or products, or even employees, make 120% of your profits. Okay? That's the top 20%. The bottom 20% loses 20% of your profits and brings your 120 down to 100. Okay? So you sell all this stuff. Some of the stuff makes you a lot of money, and it pays for what the other stuff is losing. Okay? And so you need to discontinue a product so you make more money. Now, what Gallery Furniture figured out was, we don't make money on children's furniture. Nobody makes money on children's furniture. It's basically a loss leader, no matter how you slice it, coming, going, left, right, up, down, north, south, east, west. we can't make money on children's furniture. So you know what? We're just not going to sell it. If they want children's furniture, they can go to IKEA.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you want a zebra wood dining room table, you come to Gallery Furniture. Gallery Furniture makes most of their money on mattresses. Okay. They have a mattress. They have a sleep center where if you have trouble, they advertise this on the radio. They advertise this on the newspaper. I taught them how to do advertorials. After they worked with me, they stopped running like typical furniture store ads, and they started running copy heavy full page ads in the because the newspaper does work for certain demographic. It pays. Right. And they would run these big long ads like, are you having trouble sleeping? By the way, older people who read the newspaper, they have trouble sleeping. It's a great audience, right?
It's a shotgun racking right there.
They'll have like a 2,000 word article about all tips on how to sleep and stuff. And at the end, like, well, you can go to our website, you can download our sleep report, and you can come consult with one of our sleep specialists. And they have full-time sleep specialists who do nothing but talk to people about sleep all day long. And you'll walk out of the place with all kinds of great sleep advice and a mattress. Okay. I mean, this is a very profitable, very well-run business. In fact, kind of a side story that you might enjoy. So Houston had a huge hurricane, as we can all recall. You know what Mattress Mac did? He housed homeless people who lost their houses in his stores. And then he called the news cameras. Okay, and this thing went viral. It went all over Facebook. It was on the national news. Okay, and the reporters walking through the store, you know, and there's like a guy in khakis and he's in the army, and there's a grandma and there's a family, and going from couches to sofas to beds and everywhere, they're all living in the store. He's got like 400 people living in his store. Okay, now is this like the best publicity you've ever heard of? In fact, get this, this totally came over the transom to me. I was talking to this lady, and she had something to do with the professional speaking business. And she goes, oh yeah, last fall, I have all these friends in the Speaker Association whose keynote speeches got canceled because they hired Mattress Mac to come speak at their conference instead. No kidding. Yes. Yes. Okay. So he gets viral, like, you know, the whole world knows that Gallery Furniture is taking care of homeless people. In fact, there was a scene on the news where there's like this 94-year-old woman, today's her birthday. And Mattress Mac, you know, he's like, well, happy birthday and thank you for, you know, living all these years and helping all the people you've helped. You know, Mrs. Jones, I want to give you a bedroom set. And he like gives her a bedroom set on national television. Now, does this guy know publicity or what? This guy knows 80-20, I'm telling you. Okay. No kidding. But it's an eccentric business. If you look at, you know, how the thing is run, they have expensive other furniture. They do weird things like house homeless people when there's a hurricane. They don't sell children's furniture. Their salespeople are highly trained. They always have cake. There's always cake. I don't know. Is there a strategy behind the cake? Well, I just think it makes people feel festive. You know, it's like come to Gallery Furniture, and there's always cake, man. There's always a big cake over here, you know. So, and they have things for the kids to play in. I mean, so like look, it's not just another guy with a big building that's full of furniture going, well, you know, I know the world needs furniture, so they had to come here. Like he invents reasons for people to come. Interesting. That's interesting. Well, I think that, and the takeaway point here is that 80-20 obviously is evident throughout this, but the main thing is that it's very strategic. Like these decisions have been made and have been leveraged. They're not haphazard. It's not like Mattress Mac is just hopping on Twitter for giggles, right? Like he's like, look, we're going to do this where our audience is. We're going to leverage what many consider dying platforms, but still, if that is where your market is, why would you not leverage it? So Yes, and all their media channels, they measure them. They're they have all these reports like, okay, this is the actions on Facebook, and this is the actions on Twitter, and this is Instagram, this is email, and this is newspaper, this is radio, this is TV. They have offers. They're measuring things. They're constantly refining it. So, another thing that slows people down with 80/20 is they're indoctrinated with equality. Okay, like, well, everybody's equal. Like even in the Declaration of Independence, we consider these things to be self-evident that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Yeah, absolutely true. In fact, what that is a compensation for 80/20.
Oh, you got to dig into that one.
Well, okay, so Mother Nature and survival of the fittest and the animal kingdom, it's all 80/20. Yes. Okay. Yeah. All right. 20% of the rabbits give birth to 80% of the bunnies, Yeah. And the fittest survive and all that. Okay. Yeah. Civilization itself is like a shelter against 80/20. Right? Why do we have wheelchair ramps? Why don't we just take crippled people and like shoot them and throw them in a grave? Right? Okay. Right. So like, I'm completely serious here. Like in society, you have to work together, and you have to push against, the big bad world out there. Right. Okay. And you have to compensate for the inequality. Okay. But hear me. This doesn't mean just because everybody gets to vote, just because no matter how crippled you are or how many problems you have, that there's some program or somebody that's going to try to help you. That's great. None of this obligates you to treat all your customers the same. Right. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Be nice to them and all of that, but no, you don't give them equal time. Yeah. Okay, you give the highest paying ones the premium level service, and you sell them the espresso machine, and you give them the time and attention. Most people, if you really look at it, you'll find that the amount of time that you spend on clients and projects and problems has almost no relationship to their actual profitability. Right. Because you're treating the world the way that your first grade school teacher trained you to treat it, and you're not thinking like an entrepreneur. And furthermore, I have 2 adopted kids. We have projects in Africa and India that we support, and like there's all kinds of I'm very passionate about solving problems in the world. Okay. Yeah. But here's the thing. I won't even have any money to do that if I don't do 80/20 in my business. Yes. Okay. It's like, well, you could be like a philanthropist with your time as a consultant, or you could be a philanthropist for the starving children in India, but you can't do both. Yes. There's a whole chapter in the 80/20 book about that, because if you understand 80/20, it will scare you a little bit. I had a social worker about 2 weeks ago. She goes, I've been a social worker and now I'm an entrepreneur, and I read your book. And I was like, the social workers are doing all this wrong if he's right. And I'm like, well, I am right. And she's, yeah, I know you're right. And she's like, woo. Like, I had to just, she had to start rethinking the whole way that she perceives wealth and money and how money flows and, assumptions that, now see, entrepreneurs, I mean, you could say, they're a bunch of Republicans, or well, that's not really even true at all. But what entrepreneurs are is we are students of reality, because we're the ones that has to meet payroll. We're the ones that have to pay the bills. We're the ones that have to make the world evolve. We're the ones that have to make advertising work. So we cannot afford to live in some fantasy world. Yeah. We just can't. So we know how the world works. Marketers are okay, you ever had a conversation with one of your friends and like they're not a marketer, they're not an entrepreneur, and you start to tell them how the world actually is, and they're like, and they start like, could you just not talk to me about that?
They like to believe, it's ignorance is bliss in their eyes. We'll just not touch that subject.
Right. Yeah. It's like, look, we know that 80% of the books that ever get bought never get read.
Yeah.
Right? We know that 80% of the podcast downloads never get listened to.
Yeah.
We know that 80% of the medicine never gets taken.
Yeah.
We know this. So we live in the is world instead of the should be world.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a baptism of fire for you.
Definitely. Yeah.
Right. But do you want to live in? See, I think you can only be a free man or a free woman if you actually choose to live in the is world.
Yeah.
And once you actually get into the is world, you find out actually it's very easy to work with once your blinders are off. Like, hey, man, like this is the fact is that, there's always going to be like 5% of the people that are chronically unemployed, and they're always going to be unemployed. And there's nothing you can really do to fix that per se. And there's always going to be like 5% super achievers. And this is almost like a mathematical law. So now, do we need to do something about the homeless people? Well, yes, we do. But we need to do it knowing what will be.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So 80-20 is going to happen to you no matter what. Yeah. But if you're strategic in working with 80-20, you'll get a completely different result. It's like if you're the conscious millionaire, if you will, you get a completely different result than if you just let it happen to you and it happens in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a hugely valuable point, is that for those that are not familiar with 80-20 and its profound effects, this is definitely a mind-blowing concept, right? So it's just like, this is crazy. And for those that understand it, I think the important thing is that, look, you've got to learn it. You can do with it what you want. That's fine. Really, that's secondary, but you can't deny it. It's kind of like denying gravity and then jumping off a roof. Like, you've got to understand it. You've got to know that this applies, and then do with it what you want. If you want to keep your 20% bottom customers because you like them, that's cool. Yeah. Go for it. But
and now you're conscious of it. It's like, okay, I don't actually make any money on this guy, but I really like him, and we have beers every week, and fine, right?
Yeah.
But don't do it unconsciously.
Yes. Totally. Yeah, which is why, absolutely top recommended that everybody has to understand this principle. They've got to read the book. Perry, we've got to wrap because you and I have to chat about this Kilimanjaro affiliate marketing thing after the podcast.
That's right.
We've got work to do, my friend. So tell me, what did we not cover that we probably should leave people with? Anything that I didn't ask that we should have covered?
I'll just tell you a crazy story. Kind of ties all this together in a very odd way. About 5 years ago, I had two teenagers, and they were starting to get an attitude. And the attitude was, it goes like this: my latte's too foamy. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I said, I know what to do about this. And I took them to Calcutta. Calcutta, India. And like 3 hours after we got off the plane, we are walking through the red light district, and this lady named Smriti so she tries to help prostitutes get out of the sex trade and all this kind of stuff. And so we're walking down the street, and she's introducing us to these people. I'm there with my son and my daughter, and we meet this girl, and she's really young, and we start talking about her husband. And then later, Smriti explains that her husband of this 13-year-old girl is what they call a sugar daddy, and he's like 40. Okay. And she's explaining how these women get caught up in prostitution and can't get out, and then their kids get into it. And so my son and daughter, they are just getting this like in your face education about how the world really works. And we go back to the hotel, and my daughter says, "So Dad, You know how you like to say half your battles were won for you before you were ever born? And I go, yeah. She goes, I get it. Can we go home now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so, by the, I can hook you up with the guy that hooked me up with Smriti if anybody wants to go do that trip.
Yeah.
Open a support ticket on my website. We'll get you the information. But Smriti has to find the 80% of a problem that she can solve with 20% of the resources, that there's a lever in there somewhere, right? And I can help her out because I'm finding the 80-20 levers in my business. And, I don't think there's any end to it. If you really understand 80-20, it's like, well, how high is up? It almost goes up infinitely. And so I just want to encourage you that, like, once you actually get this inside your head, you'll never get it out. You'll never see the world the same again. And it's an incredibly powerful principle. And when you really focus on principles, you can stop obsessing about these 9,000 little techniques and tricks and all this kind of stuff. And it saves you so much brain space, and it saves you so much time. And principles work. Techniques are not guaranteed to work, but principles do. So
that's it. Yeah. No, absolutely. Wise words. And principles will last the test of time. They are worth committing to learning and understanding. And I know. Again, like, I've gone through this book a number of times, and I will go through it again, and will continue to go through it. And every time, learn something new. So, Perry, tell people, where can they get a hold of you? Where can they learn more? Where can they get the book? All that stuff.
Well, you can get the book like on Amazon. It's probably about $18 or something, and it's a it's a book, and it's an ebook, and it's Audible, and it's got all that stuff. You can actually get about $10 off. You could buy it for $7, including shipping, in the United States, if you go to perrymarshall.com/8020, and you'll also get some additional bonuses that you wouldn't with the regular book. And what you'll actually see is an example of deliberately taping dollar bills to a product to ship it out instead of doing it by accident. And you can see how that works, and you can see a whole entire sales funnel, how it works. You can observe how I sell to you, and you can just be a student of the sales process. So pay attention, because that stuff's, it's been rigorously tested and carefully applied, and you can almost certainly find something, steal an idea and use it in your sales.
Wonderful. That's amazing. Okay, Perry, I appreciate it. We'll make sure to link all of that up in the show notes below and attached with the episode. I really can't thank you enough, my friend. That was tremendous. I got a ton of value here. I've got pages, more notes, lots to think about, and we've got to chat this offer after. So thank you again for being here.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for doing what you do and trying to stamp out ignorance in the world.
That's the goal.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Perry. All right, my friend.